Hello, greetings everyone. In the last lecture, in case of international trade and payments, we are currently working on this chapter. Um, we completed absolute advantage till that session, where we saw that if there can be a case where one country has an absolute advantage in one particular product, where it is, what do we say, it has complete expertise. So in our example, India has a complete expertise in producing pencils and Germany has a complete expertise in producing pens. So we saw that if if trade agreements do exist between two countries, then there is a chance that yeah, sorry. So in case of without in when we look at when the countries do not trade with each other, as compared to when they start trading with each other, there is a great significant increase in the output of both number of pens as well as pencils benefiting the both countries. Moving on to a comparative advantage. So now, what's the difference between absolute advantage and comparative advantage that we would be looking at in this session? Um, just give me a minute. Yeah. So country A has a comparative advantage over country B in producing goods when country A has a lower opportunity cost compared to country B. Hold on. I just, production capacity. Somehow it has gotten new technology, new resources, such that previously the number of hours were required to produce pens. Now that has changed, and now the number of hours required to produce one pen and one pencil is both 1 hour each. In the previous examples, it was higher. Now it has reduced. So now we can see that India has an absolute advantage in both the products. What does it mean? In both the products, if we compare, India can produce much more number of output compared to Germany. But now here we would be looking from opportunity cost terms. This is the main important term that is being there out here. This the first comparative advantage from absolute advantage. So what does opportunity cost mean? We saw that in previous recordings in chapter one, that opportunity cost is the cost foregone by choosing one selection. So right now, let's assume if India uses all its resources to manufacture pens, it means that there is a chance it could have used those resources to produce pencils, but it decided to go with pens. So what's the cost that is foregone in terms of pens for that matter? So let's say simple example here we can say you are deciding to continue with your actual career. That means assuming you left out your CA career. So let's say now you through your actual career you get a job, you start earning huge packages, let's say around 15 lakh, 20 lakh, but you missed out the opportunity to be a CA. Now if you had become a CA, let's say the your package would be around 10 lakh, 12 lakh, whatever. So now the opportunity cost of becoming an actuary would be 10 lakh as you missed that opportunity of being a CA. No doubt you are earning more as being an actuary, but what's the second best? What's the next best choice that you missed? So that particular cost, let's say now you are continuing with your actually you missed doing MBA from IIM or something. So now there the package goes on till 25 lakhs, 30 lakhs, whatever. So that would be the opportunity cost of continuing with actuaries and not taking that another option. So in this case here, let's look at the opportunity cost for India and Germany. So here for India, the opportunity cost of one pen is one pencil since it requires one hour to produce each of this. So rather than producing one pen, it could have produced that one pencil. So that's why the opportunity cost is 1:1. That's the ratio. If one good is forgone, if one good is not produced, if one pen is not produced, it could produce one pencil. That's the cost. Here we are not at all looking in terms of monetary terms or rupee terms, dollar terms, whatever. Here we are just looking in terms of labor terms, cost of not cost, manufacturing terms, supply terms. What's the manufacturing power? What's the manufacturing capacity? If I use all my resources to produce one pen, मैंने one pencil miss कर दिया. If I use all my resources to produce one pencil, I missed the opportunity to produce one pen. That is what opportunity cost means. In case of Germany, if we look at it, Germany has 2 hours and 5 hours respectively. So here, let's say if Germany decides to produce one pen, okay, it takes 2 hours. So rather than one pen, it could have produced zero point 0.4 pencils. So how did that number come up? 0.4. Uh, in 2 hours, it could have produced zero point 0.4 pencils. In 4 hours, it could have produced zero point 0.8 pencils. And in 5 hours, it could have produced one pencil. Basically, it's just the ratio. So rather than producing one pen, it could have produced zero point 0.4 pencils. Now, the opportunity cost of one pencil, let's say Germany decides to go with pencil, it takes 5 hours to produce one pencil. So rather than this, it in 2 hours, 2 hours, and 1 hour, it could have produced 2.5 pencils in that matter of fact. Okay, my style is yeah, 2.5. So here it says that opportunity cost of one pencil is 2.5 pence for Germany, so which is very much higher. So now here we can see that the final conclusion, moving on to the final conclusion, Germany has a comparative advantage in pens. This is what we can conclude from this table. And India has a comparative advantage in pencil. So after concluding this, it's completely clear that look at it in cost terms. For one pen, for India, it costs one pencil. The cost of producing one pen is one pencil, and the cost of producing one pen for Germany is zero point 0.4 pencil. Definitely, the cost is lesser out here. Lesser cost means comparative advantage. Germany has comparative advantage in pens. Considering for pencils, one pencil ka cost is just one pen for India, and one pencil ka cost is 2.5 pence, which is way much higher for Germany. That's why we can see that India has a comparative advantage in making pencils. So now what will happen if we will move on to the trade agreements. Hold on. Again, the same thing. If the countries trade and if the countries do not trade, what would happen? Okay. So this is the example where both the countries are trading. So here, both the countries, if they have like in the previous example, both the countries have 240 hours of their total, what do we say, manufacturing hours, total labor hours. So from 240, if they look at 50-50, India can produce 120 pence, 120 pencils. Germany, in other case, can produce 60 pence and 24 pencils, leading to the total output. Now, if both countries decide to trade, this is the turning point and produce goods with lower opportunity cost. So we just saw in the previous slide the opportunity cost of each of those goods for each of these countries. Now, whichever country, each country will produce goods just with lower opportunity cost. So which would mean that India would produce pencils and Germany would produce pens. But just to show an increase in total output of both goods, India would put some resources into pen production as well because it has absolute advantage in both the products. So now, just this is just again an assumption. This is just an example. Let's say out of 240 hours, India decides to allocate 150 hours, much more hours because a pencil ka opportunity cost is lower. So much more hours for pencil and some hours for pen. Okay, Germany, since it has absolute advantage in no products, it has comparative advantage and lower opportunity cost. Just hear out my word. If you want, you can just replay this whole session. This is a difficult one. Germany has lower comparative advantage in pens. Germany has a comparative advantage in pens and lower opportunity cost. It will use all its resources, 240 hours, to produce pens and ends up producing 120 pens. Now you can just compare out the total output. There is an increase in total output for both pens and pencil if both the countries decide to trade. So this is the benefit of international trade, where both the countries gain from each other's expertise. But here, India had a comparative advantage in both the goods. But again, we went to look ahead from opportunity cost perspective. So that's why we came to know that this could be a different set of outputs that could be produced, maximizing both countries' profits. Moving on. Gains from, okay, hold on, I guess this, yeah. gains from trade based on comparative advantage. So now looking at this, yeah, in order for both countries to gain from trade, the exchange ratio must lie between the two non-trading opportunity cost ratios. Again, this you can pause it. You can visit the CP7 books for examples. I have used different example out here, and CP7 has another example, so that would give you two examples to read it about and help you to understand this whole picture more clearly. The exchange ratio should lie between 1 and 0.4 and 1 is to 1. Now, I'll clear this, move to the previous slide. Here, the ratio was 1 is to 1, and in case of Germany, the ratio was 1 is to 0.4. Now, for one pen, Germany would at least demand zero point 0.4 pencils. So, look out here for one pen. Okay, Germany is exporting one pen. It would at least, understand the word, at least demand zero point 0.4 pencils. 0.5 mila, better. 0.8 mila, better. 1 is to 1 mil gaya. Germany is very much happy. एक पेन के सामने जर्मनी इज जस्ट प्रोड्यूसिंग 0.4 पेंसिल्स, वो खुद इतना प्रोड्यूस कर रही है, तो उससे तो वो ज्यादा ही एक्सपेक्ट करेगी. So for Germany, for one pen, the ratio should be at least greater than 0.4 of the pencils. Greater than, and whatever India is expecting the trade conditions, 0.4 से तो ज़्यादा ही मिलना चाहिए, because 0.4 वो खुद उतना बनाती है. In case of India, for one pencil, in case of India, India is exporting one pencil. तो उसके सामने वो एक पेन तो एक्सपेक्ट करती, वो एक पेन तो खुद ही बना सकती है. इंडिया कैन प्रोड्यूस दैट वन पेन फॉर वन पेंसिल. सो व्हाट इंडिया वुड वांट इज कि इंडिया वुड एक्सपेक्ट कि मुझे एक पेंसिल के सामने एटलीस्ट वन पेन ज्यादा मिले. ओके, एक पेंसिल के सामने ग्रेटर देन वन पेन मुझे मिले, बिकॉज एक पेन तो इंडिया खुद ही बना सकते हैं, राइट. सो ग्रेटर देन वन पेन कुड बी 1.5 पेन, कुड बी 2 पेन, कुड बी 2.2 पेन. एज वी मूव क्लोजर, अगर इंडिया को एक पेंसिल के सामने 2.5 मिलता है, इंडिया इज द हैप्पीएस्ट. उससे बेटर ऑफर नहीं है अवेलेबल. दिस इज द बेस्ट ट्रेड डील दैट हैज हैपेंड. So for one pencil, if India gets 2.5 pence, that is the best trade deal. But if it gets lesser, एक पेंसिल के बदले एक पेन मिलता है, that is the worst trade deal, because वो खुद भी एक पेंसिल के बदले एक पेन बना सकते थे इंडिया में, and after trading it's still getting. So as we move closer to this ratio, this side's ratio, one pencil ke samne one pen, India is at a losing side. If we move closer towards this ratio, one pencil ke samne 2.5 pen, India is at a winning side. Now moving on to Germany's perspective. अगर जर्मनी को एक पेन के सामने 0.4 पेंसिल ही मिलता है, सिर्फ 0.4, it is at its loss. जर्मनी के लिए the trade deal is not good, because एक पेन के सामने 0.4 पेंसिल जर्मनी खुद भी प्रोड्यूस कर सकती है. Now again, after trading, it is getting 0.4 pencil, so that is not good. If Germany is getting for one pen, one pencil, which is very much high, which is the best India could offer, it is a very good trade deal for Germany, the best it could ever get. So these are the costs of, we'll just move on to that slide. How countries can benefit uh, gains of trade due to comparative advantage. I'll just close this one. Okay, yeah. So, like I mentioned, the exchange ratio must lie between 1 and 0.4, and 1 is to 1. उसके ऊपर exchange ratio हो ही नहीं सकता, because both the countries have that particular what do we say, manufacturing capacity. Now, just elaborating that example which I just gave, if Germany sells a pen means exports a pen, it would at least want 0.4 pencils in exchange, because it could have produced this itself. Again, this is in technical terms. I explained it to you in much better terms in Hindi, so you might have understood this already. Similarly, if India sells a pencil, it would at least want one pen in exchange, because it could have manufactured that itself. Once is zyada mila, 2.5 mila. That is the best deal India could ever get. So yes, but in reality, whatever the exchange ratio is, like it's written here, it should lie between this particular range which is there, which we found out earlier, and it would depend on supply of demand of pens and pencils. Sorry, I guess I used this from textbook examples. Pens and pencils. Here it's pencil. My handwriting on this is a bit weird. It will slowly improve with practice. Surely. Yeah. The benefits of trade may not be equal for two countries. Like I mentioned, जो भी exchange ratio रहेगा, अगर more towards 1:1 है, तो फिर जर्मनी को benefit होगा. More is to 1:0.4 है, so इंडिया को benefit होगा. It's mentioned out here. So yeah, the nearer the exchange ratio is from 1 is to 0.4, India will benefit. मतलब उसको एक पेन के सामने एक पेंसिल के सामने that is exporting उसको 2.5 तक पेन मिलेंगे. That is where India will benefit. Similarly, if the exchange ratio is close to 1:1, मतलब 1:1 is the production capacity of India, मतलब पूरा का पूरा इंडिया जो प्रोड्यूस कर रहा है वो जर्मनी को मिल रहा है, जर्मनी विल गेन द मोस्ट. जर्मनी एक पेंसिल के सामने 0. एक पेन के सामने 0.4 पेंसिल ही कर पा रहा है, अगर उसको एक पेन के सामने 1 पेंसिल मिलेगा, दैट्स व्हाई जर्मनी विल गेन द मोस्ट. Again, you can just pause this video. You can just review the slides again back and forth. And just to understand this example clearer, this could be asked as a part of a numerical question as well. It's a combination of numerical question and a theory question, comparative advantage and absolute advantage. You should know the difference between both the tools. What do you mean by comparative advantage? What do you mean by absolute advantage? So this is the high chances this could be asked in the exam, and the conceptual base of this is also a bit difficult, but surely we will go through questions and other things on this, so this could help you get some more practice on this. Now this is just a proper formal definition that you could write in exam. If the question comes, you could start your answer with this. We can state the law of comparative advantage. So when the opportunity cost of producing a good differs between two countries, definitely it would differ. सबका cost अलग रहेगा, सबका manufacturing capacity, सबका expertise would be different. So when it differs, each country can gain if it produces and exports those goods which it faces lower opportunity cost. So in this, we saw there is an opportunity cost for each of this product. One pen ka one pencil hai, one pencil ka one pen hai. So jiska opportunity cost, whichever opportunity cost for whichever product is lower, country would export that and import another product for which the opportunity cost is higher. As simple as that. जिसका opportunity cost lower है, जो product का वो export, जो product का opportunity cost higher है, वो import. So you can like mark this out, or probably I can just write this out. Lower opportunity cost. This is export, and it's vice versa. So high opportunity cost. So you will import. Okay. This is the idea behind comparative advantage. Moving on. Yes. So this was just gains of trade due to, what do we say, comparative advantage. Now we would look at some gains of trade due to other reasons, like why each countries trade between each other and what are the other sources of gain that could help. So the existence of comparative advantage, like we saw on the previous slide, is the main reason for trade. However, trade can occur when there is no comparative advantage as well. Yeah. So the following 5 reasons are decreasing costs due to economies of scale. Just give me a minute. You might already know what economies of scale mean now, producing in bulk. So that would just decrease your costs. So in case of India, let's say, manufacturing pencils, let's say India manufacturing pencils. Pencils, the requirement in India is just 100, but overall globally अगर देखने जाए, in case of Germany as well, Germany भी compare कर सकते हैं. Germany और India दोनों का मिला के might be the demand might be 200, so more production, so more amount of natural resources or everything required. So more the stuff, more large scale production होगा, more machinery use होगी, फटाफट production होगा, easily supply start terms होंगे. So all that thing would just decrease your cost. So we have discussed this previously as well. As economies of scale, as your manufacturing capacity increases, as your company increases, the cost would decrease. Differences in demand. So countries will export goods for which their supply would exceed their demand. Now, in this, just another example, India has a lot of agriculture produce. India has mangoes. India has wheat. बहुत सारा ample supply. And in case of other countries, colder countries like US, Europe, the supply, the demand is there, but supply production कुछ होता ही नहीं है. Since India में बहुत सारा extra है, since India has excess supply, it will export those goods only and import those goods where uska supply comes. That's this is just the differences in demand between two countries. Increased competition. So now, since domestic companies are exporting abroad, they would also want lower prices to attract them. Now, let's say if we are exporting mangoes, if we are exporting, let's say pen, in this example as well, if they're exporting pencils, they're exporting it to an abroad country. Unke abroad, there the what do we say? The terms conditions might be different. There the people's perspective, people's choices, children's choices might be different. So Indian company, let's say an Apsara company, while exporting pencils to Germany, what it will do is it will lower prices that more and more Germans would buy. It would increase R&D, research and development, ताकि it will produce much more, user-friendly pencils. Like this example, pen pencil used by Germany, so it will just produce pen pencil and just export it. Something of that sort. The technology increase होगा, R&D increase होगा, और Upsher, I would try and make the pencils much more better so that Indians भी use कर सकते हैं and Germans भी also use कर सकते हैं. So that would lead to increased competition. Even Germans would import pens. So yes, and end result is Indians as and Germans would have lots and lots of products as a choice. Simple example in case of cars or any other matter. Cars, Indian companies also make cars. Foreign CB cars आती है. So end result, consumer के पास बहुत सारे choices है. So that is the advantage from trade. If foreign companies can also enter market, and Indian companies can also supply those goods. So a lot of competition and lot of choices. In case of some countries like China or some socialist countries, what happens is only the government is the sole producer and the sole supplier. It does not allow not China or probably Russia or North Korea for that example. North Korea is a much more better example. China has now opened up. So what happens is it's a dictatorial country. So the government itself would manufacture, let's say, simple example, clothes le lo, shoes le lo. The government itself would manufacture, government companies ही manufacture करेंगे, and it would just give two, three choices. Why this is happening, we would see in chapter 2 and chapter 15, the socialist economy and capitalist economy. In capitalist economy, there are many companies. They fight, they compete for better prices, better products. In socialist economy, the government only is the sole seller, and so the main reason is ताकि the welfare of the society increases. Capitalist में कैसा होता है? Capitalist is the company increase the prices. Let's say simple example, clothes, सब clothes का prices increase हो गया. So consumers were like certain suddenly cost बढ़ गए, consumers को difficulty आ गई. But if government is selling, government will ensure कि every part of the economy, rich individuals, poor individuals are able to afford it. In India, India is a mixed economy. Some industries like let's say defense, railways, are completely under control of government. So government only operates them, and government only sells, manufactures and sells. So in case of railways as well, you might have seen social welfare के लिए, it's just government, no private companies have entered. So yeah, and other cases, there are a lot of private players, so leading to much more competition and much more choices for everyone. Yeah, moving on to trade as an engine of growth. So as the world basically grows, world economy grows, exporting nations, who are the exporting nations? India is an exporting nation, China is an exporting nation. Exporting nations will experience growth as this exports will have a high income elasticity of demand. What does this mean by that? As the economy grows, everyone gets much more income. Every individual in general, the per capita income increases. Everyone is rich. So they'll just demand more and more. That would again lead to more and more exports by India and China and other exporting countries, leading to again a growth. So all this trade basically leads to a whole overall growth of the economy. Moving on to non-economic advantages. So again, other advantages like political ties. India has political ties with so many countries, so all that thing also affects it. India has now political ties with Russia. So when all the countries were against Russia in this recent war of Russia and Ukraine, all the countries voted against Russia, but India and China were neutral. Why? Because India already has so many political ties with Russia, and that came to us as a better advantage as well. Russia sold lot of crude oil to us at a very cheaper rate. When the crude oil prices in market are around 120 to $130 a barrel, India got a heavy discount on crude purchases from Russia. Why? Because Russia's economy is already sinking. So to save that economy, to get some what do we say currency, get some foreign currency, and get some trade agreements, Russia sold to us in lot cheaper terms, and it benefited us because of that political ties. So again, due to trade, due to other relations between countries, there are a lot of non-economic advantages as well. Terms of trade index. So terms of trade index is the equation where it just states that the index of export prices upon index of import prices. Let's say if India is an exporting nation, it exports all this agricultural produce, mangoes, wheat, sugar, everything, whatever. Let's say the price of there's a sudden increase in the export prices. There's a sudden increase in all these food item prices. Somehow due to shortage of supply, due to tsunami, calamities, whatever. So now, due to this, but import, what does India import? Let's say India imports crude. Just an example, India imports crude, and India exports all those agricultural goods. Crude prices are constant. Assume crude prices are constant, and all the agricultural prices increase. So India would benefit from this as the export prices, the index of export prices has increased, and index of import prices is more or less kept constant. So yeah, so if the index have both the same values, then the base value of the index is 100. Yeah, it's mentioned in this first line. The indices of export and input prices are both measured in local currency terms. For India, it would be measured in rupee terms only. If we are exporting, let's say, 1 dozen mangoes at let's say 77.50, and we are exporting, simple example, we are exporting 7 liters of import. We are importing 7 liters of crude, let's say at 120, whatever. So this would all be in rupee terms. Nothing would be in dollar terms or German currency like euro terms or any other method. Since we are just considering terms of trade index from Indian perspective. Increase in terms of trade index is regarded as an improvement in terms of trade. This would involve increase in export prices relative to an increase in import prices. Like what do we say? Balance of payments would improve, economy would improve, exports would improve, GDP would improve when the terms of trade index increases, and that would happen when the export prices increase relative to import prices. But that's not the case generally, since India is largely dependent on importing crude oil. Almost 70 to 80% of imports are just crude oil, defense products, and everything. And those prices just keep on rising, rising, and rising. And our exports are generally food items where still the what do we say? Still, the prices don't rise that much. So the terms of trade index is less than one. It should be almost 100 exactly, but it's less than 100 or less than 100%. So less than one that we can say. It's generally that case for India. So changes in terms of trade are caused by changes in market conditions, exports, imports, and changes in exchange rates. So yeah, that is pretty much clear from this. Moving on to arguments for restricting trade. Now, like I mentioned in the first lecture of this chapter itself, India did not allow global trade before 1992. After 1992, after the introduction of liberalization, privatization, and globalization only, Indian economy opened up and foreign companies came in, and Indian companies also started exporting goods. So now some of the ways in which Indian government can restrict trade. So restricting trade in the sense simply just not letting India import that particular product. So putting a cap on imports. So that's what restricting trade would mean. So government may restrict trade in this following 6 ways. There can be other ways as well. If you could think of it, see again, these questions will be asked in the form of a case study. So this case study questions would ideally involve there are like two companies, two countries, this happens, that happens, and then finally what are the ways something, let's say, bad has happened, let's say a war has happened, or some other perspective. Yeah, simple example. Let's say a war has happened, Russia, Ukraine. So now government wants to restrict imports from Russia. So what are the ways it can do? So again, so various case study, different questions can come up, but these 6 points are the core idea behind it. You can also add two, three more points with regard to whatever case is there in the question. So how can a government restrict custom duties and tariffs on imports? So you might already know there might be a lot of custom duties and tariffs on whatever luxury goods are imported or any such goods are imported by India. In case of crude oil as well, government puts a tax, import duty, custom duty. Simple example. A lot of people when buying an iPhone from India, the prices of iPhone would be 1,20,000, 1,30,000, whatever, whichever are the latest version of iPhone you're buying. In other case, some people do is if they have contacts in US, if they have some of the relatives coming from US, they would buy that in US at let's say $1,000. In US, it would be just available at $1,000. Converting it into Indian rupee, it's around, let's say, considering it's 80,000. So the cost of buying an iPhone in US is 80,000 because the iPhone is produced and manufactured and everything in US. It's cheaper as compared to when it is imported from US, like exported from US and imported by India. What happens in between? Taxes happen, custom duties happen, tariffs happen. So this is what government puts and government earns. If we bring an iPhone directly from US, we tend to skip all this custom imports, custom duties and imports. But again, that is we can bring small goods like iPhone, one phone, one small watches and something. We can't bring huge chunks and bulks of goods, let's say like 1,000 iPhones or something. So for that, all this custom duties and tariffs would be important. So government can increase this by, thereby, then the cost of that particular product in India in rupee terms would be higher, and people would buy less. Automatically, import come on import quotas. So import quotas are for generally coal, crude, and etc. So government can restrict the, let's say the demand of a particular product is 100. This number demand for pencils is 100. Government can decide कि 100 का demand है, उसमें से will only import 25%. That's it. उससे ज्यादा import नहीं करेंगे. Just 25% import, बाकी 75% would should come from domestic supply. अगर उतना quota available है, that would encourage domestic industries to manufacture more and more. In case of coal, simple example, if government starts importing all the coal, then Indian companies like Coal India and Vedanta and everyone would just be out of business because import करके cheap मिल रहा है. Simple example, imported coal is cheaper than the coal in India. So what would happen is सब लोग imported coal ही लेंगे and Indian coal कोई लेगा ही नहीं. So all the companies would bankrupt. So that's why there can be a quota कि सिर्फ 25% import होगा, बाकी सब Indian domestic supply ही use होगा. So that can happen for any product. This was just a simple example for coal. Subsidies on domestic product. Now, what can Indian government do is just to discourage imports. It can increase subsidies on Indian products like electric cars. There are subsidies on electric cars. There can be subsidies on, let's say, simple another hypothetical example could not happen in real life. If the government wants to encourage, let's say, Indian manufactured smartphones. So whichever companies are manufacturing smartphones in India, उसपे let's say 10% off, 10% subsidy from government. So that would just reduce the price. More and more Indians will prefer that particular product rather than imported products. That would lead to growth of domestic industries compared to the foreign ones. Administrative regulations, different regulations can be put into play. Procurement procedures for favoring domestic suppliers and purchases. So government also needs a lot of purchases for infrastructure, for building schools, colleges, whatever. The government for building bullet train. This is this is an example, a bullet train or metro or something. So government can ensure that ऐसे सब contracts of making bullet trains and metro or whatever that matter of fact, वो सिर्फ Indian companies like L&T को जाए या दूसरे कोई companies को जाए, just boosting domestic suppliers. But in reality, Japanese companies, Chinese companies do take those contracts. But yeah, if the government wants to restrict imports, restrict trade, this is what government can do. Then dumping. So this is another example where exports are ideally sold at prices below marginal cost, often as a result of a government subsidy. So dumping occurs, just an example, mangoes. So India would just export mangoes at a cheaper rate so that more and more mangoes are exported as a result of government subsidy, encouraging the production of mangoes, encouraging domestic trade. So, and reducing imports. I know mangoes are not imported, but still, if there's some other product, government can provide subsidies on export. Let's say electric cars. Simple example, electric cars. So now considering Dubai, Dubai has an option to import Tesla. Dubai does not manufacture electric cars. Example, उसके पास ऑप्शन है कि यूएस से टेस्ला इंपोर्ट करे या इंडिया से टाटा मोटर्स के टाटा के ईवी इंपोर्ट करे. Now what government can do is government can give a subsidy on Tata EVs. Tata EV का लक्ष्य प्राइस है 15 लाख. गवर्नमेंट ने 2 लाख का सब्सिडी दिया तो एंड यूजर को पड़ेगा 13 लाख. So what can government do is reduce the price. So automatically Dubai would see that कि India के EV का price कम है. It would import. Dubai would import more and more EVs for India. Tata Motors would gain, India would gain, and Tesla would not gain because वहाँ से उन्होंने import नहीं किया. So that's how government can encourage domestic trade. So yeah, I guess the remaining meeting time is just 1 minute. So I would need to stop this session now. You can just the another session would just be for 15 or 20 minutes, or I guess 30 minutes for that matter of fact. So you can just continue it in one go rather than breaking it out. So I'll just end it out here. There are few more slides, like I mentioned, 20-30 minutes of this chapter more remaining. So you can surely continue with another lecture. So thanks a lot for seeing this session. Do reach out to me in case you have any doubts. Thank you.